probably talked to a couple hundred Etsy merchants at this point. And from having a couple hundred conversations with people across all niches, across all different types of models of selling, whether that be Etsy print on demand, making for inventory, making for order, digital downloads, I've collected a pretty significant amount of data, I would have to say, on what the core things are that hold Etsy merchants back from really entering the 6-figure-a-year profits mark. We kind of talked about this on a broad level. I really want to highlight in this video and paint a picture of what that actually looks like. We're gonna paint the picture of what that business looks like. Then we're going to unveil the only thing that really holds sellers back. And then we're gonna talk about all the objections that I've gotten when I present possible solutions to the biggest thing that's holding them back. And hopefully these objections hit home with some of you guys, because these objections could be very well things that you have told yourself. And hopefully by the end of this video, you realize that they're really the thing that's inhibiting you from reaching this goal. So let's paint this picture of a 6-figure profit business in 2024, right? There's 3 things. One, we have to ask ourselves, do we have scalable products? Meaning that at any given moment in time, if we've got a huge influx of orders, can we fulfill those orders in a reasonable amount of time without displenishing the customer experience by them having to wait multiple weeks for their order to ship, right? So do we have scalable products that we can get out large volumes of goods in a good, unembarrassing amount of time? Number 2, is the development of our products repeatable, where if I remove myself, I could hire somebody else to make that design. So if you are designing baby clothes, right? Your job then becomes making a prototype, and then you have systems in place that your employees or your seamstresses that you work with follow to create that perfect product, that perfect baby hat every single time, right? Is it a scalable and repeatable system that somebody else can do other than you? Number 3, is your sales trackable? At a high level, a lot of times when we launch our stores for the first time, we kind of have an idea of what our product costs are, what our raw materials cost, and then we just 3 or 4x the price, and then we just assume that we're making money, and that gets us to a certain point. But on a high level, especially if you're crossing over into the 7-figure-a-year mark, and now you have employees, and you're maxing out your ad budget, and you have more overhead and expenses, you need to know what your cost of goods sold are on a per sale basis. We're gonna go more into this later. Everything in your business needs to be trackable. So if you are doing everything made to order, right, or you're doing all custom orders, it's really, really hard to have a trackable business, right, where then at the end of the month, you can see where all the money is being spent with your cost of goods sold, with your labor, all the things, right? So is everything trackable within your business? Everything in your business, from forecasting raw materials, from deciding what new products you're gonna launch, to where you're gonna invest most of your time and money in ads, right? Everything, it should be data driven. Nothing should be Hannah going over to the shelf and seeing what I'm running out of stock of, right? You should be able to log into a database or export a report and see what concrete numbers are, right? And you can't do that if you don't track your cost of goods sold, and you can't track your cost of goods sold if you don't use a SKU system, which we'll talk about later. Is everything being tracked properly in your business? Are your books being done properly, where your profit and loss statement at the end of the month is actually a true representation of your profit? If you don't have every breakdown of your numbers at the end of the month of your business, you don't know what dials to tweak if you're not tracking it properly, right? So you can't optimize and you can't tweak the dials of your business engine if you don't know what your marketing cost percentage is, if you don't know your cost of goods sold, if you don't know, what are all the fees that you're requiring, what your shipping cost percentage is at the end of the month, what your packaging costs are, right? You need to know the makeup of every single inflow and outflow, every dollar spent that's going in and out of your business. And like I said, you know, you're not crazy if you've never done this before, right? If you're the person that just, I kind of know what my costs are, I'm just doubling the price or 3xing my price based off what I think my costs are, that gets you to a certain point. But again, when you're crossing the line, you're getting into the 7 figures, 8 figures a year marks, right? We need to know every single breakdown of our numbers. So now that we've painted this picture, what is really the only thing that I see that holds sellers back? Drumroll please. That is having conflicted expectations versus sacrifice. What does that mean? That means that there is a conflict of what the goal is, that is doing 6 figures profit, later 6 figures, maybe 7 figures a year, versus the actual sacrifice they're physically willing to do to get that, right? They have this conflicting want versus what they're willing to do. I know this because I could sit there on calls and provide 10 solutions to solve their problem, but if they come back with 20 excuses of why they can't implement change, then you can't really do anything about it. So now let's talk about a list of objections that I would get to some core things that hold people back. I want to get into the later 6 figures and beyond, but I do not want to invest in marketing for my business. I have yet to see a shop that does 7 figures, multiple 7 figures, that doesn't have their Etsy ad budget maxed out. And I'm not saying just go max out your Etsy ad budget and blindly run ads. There's a lot of things that go into running ads and the optimization of ads, which I have full trainings in my channel, and watch them completely, understand how ads work. But I have yet to see an Etsy shop that does those numbers without a marketing budget built into their business model. If you know one, link it below. Let me know and I'll investigate, because I just don't think it's a thing. But if you could prove me wrong, make sure you comment it in the description. Number 2, I want to get to the 6-figure profit, but I do not want to track my cost of goods sold, or I'm guessing at it and I'm doing my bookkeeping on a cash basis because that's just what I know and it's easy. So what is the difference between doing your bookkeeping on a cash basis versus accrual basis? I have full videos on this as well. When you're doing a cash-based accounting, that means that if Hannah made $100,000 that month in sales, but Hannah spent $120,000 a month on labor cost, on raw materials. Maybe $80,000 of that was raw materials because I'm stocking up for Christmas and Christmas is around the corner, so I had to buy a bunch of goods, right? And then I had labor costs, like I said, I have fees built into that. I had shipping costs. I had, I don't know, I bought some new stuff for the office, whatever it is. That means on a cash basis that in that month, I made negative $20,000. That is technically true, and at the end of the year, when you look at your whole balance sheet, right, there actually might be a true number there that displays profit or a loss. But the problem when you do your books like this, when you sell physical product goods, if you're a brick and mortar store or you sell physical product goods online, right, the problem with doing your bookkeeping on a cash basis is that it's not showing you a true breakdown of your business engine, right? Just because you made 100 but you spent 120, that doesn't mean that you actually didn't make a profit that much based on the sale of your items. The reason why it's showing a loss is because you're expensing all of that raw material before it actually sells. So the alternative to that is something called accrual-based accounting, which means that you're not actually expensing the cost of the product that you sold until it sells. And so how do you do accrual-based accounting? Well, if you're in print on demand, it's really easy because Printify already has your cost of goods sold inside your account for you. But if you're not doing print on demand, you actually have to associate every single option that you have in your offerings, in your listings, with something called a SKU. And you have a place for this inside of your Etsy account, right? And most people, I would say, don't know what this is. A SKU stands for stock keeping unit. A stock keeping unit is a unique identification code that is associated with that unique product. So if you sell scrunchies in sizes small, medium, and large, and you sell them in colors pink, black, and white, right? A black large scrunchie would have its own unique SKU in that variation option. Now, a huge objection I get to this of why people don't want to use SKUs and why they don't want to track SKUs is because they either have so many variation options and they don't want to put in the work to give every single variation option a SKU, or it's because they're doing made to order. So they're working in reaction to the orders coming in. And the reason they keep it made to order is because they might use the raw material, say the silk for that scrunchie, for other products in their store. So they don't want to pre-make product and then have it sit there and not sell. Again, doing this gets you to a certain point, but on a high level, this is just not really an efficient way to run a business. But even let's just say you want to stay in the made to order category and still work reactionary to the orders coming in. At the very least, what you want to do is begin using SKUs, right? This is going to solve about half your problem, right? Because then at the end of the month, you can go into Etsy and you can export a report and you can actually see on a SKU level what you're selling at the end of the month. Then you can begin making data-based decisions based off what is selling the most. So you can start moving away from made to order and making for inventory. So if you know that the black large scrunchie is selling most of the time based off that SKU, and you can track it because you know you have SKUs, so you can see that it's selling the most, then for the next month you can actually start prepping black large scrunchies, so you're not working reactionary to your business, right? And then you can start making data-based decisions instead of just waiting for the orders to come in. And that's how you slowly transition out of made to order to making for inventory. But you can't do that and you can't make database decisions if you don't have SKUs. The SKU is also what's going to be correlated to your cost of goods sold. The moral of the story here is if you have SKUs, it's going to solve part of your problem. And don't worry, I'm going to put out more videos on SKUs, how to create a SKU system, and how to use them properly to track the actual products that you're selling. The next one is I want to stop making all the products myself, but I've tried to hire someone before and it did not work out. So a lot of times, especially with small businesses and with creators that are kind of like me, we're kind of control freaks. We like everything perfect and we're perfectionists. And then we hire somebody for the first time and we just get a bad taste in our mouth. But what you have to understand is that you only have so many hours in the day to make your goods or to make designs, right? At some point, if you want to scale, you are going to need help. You are going to need somebody else in there. So if you try to hire somebody and it didn't work out once, I would suggest trying it 4, 5, 6, 7 more times, right? Because sometimes that's what it takes. You don't always nail the first time, the first employee, you know, they're not always a rock star. And I have a lot of videos on how to hire, how to fire in my channel. But yeah, it's a learning process. I made mega mistakes my first year in business. I had 6 employees and I hired unqualified people. I was overpaying, overstaffed. And what I realized is that I actually needed 2 good people instead of 6 okay ones. And so yeah, it's a learning process, and going from a solopreneur to then somebody actually helping you take off that workload is really, really what's gonna set your bandwidth apart and being able to produce more. I wanna hire someone to help make my goods, but it will kill my profit. So that is a very common objection as well, is that, well, if I hire someone else to do it, then I'm not gonna make any money. Well, again, if you want scalable and repeatable and trackable, then I would suggest that you look for new product opportunities that will be profitable with somebody else making them. Again, there's a conflict of ideation there. So for instance, for one of our products, we don't pay per hour for them to make them. We actually pay per unit. So if they're making a lot of units in an hour, right, it makes sense for us because then we can actually track the actual cost, right? Because we're paying per unit for them to complete the item. And then also it's better for them because if they can make 4 or 5 units in an hour, right, they're pretty much making like 3 times the minimum wage. So that's one idea that you could do in the beginning. Eventually, paying per hour is probably going to be cheaper, but to keep things trackable and scalable in the beginning and for peace of mind, right, you could consider paying somebody per unit. And you also have to find somebody that's okay with that, right? And it might be just part-time work in the beginning. And again, you might have to go through 3, 4, 5 people until you find that person. And going through 3 or 4 or 5 people might cost money, and you might invest money and time into people that don't work out, but that again is part of that scaling process. I want to stop doing my own fulfillment, but no one can make the products as good as me, so I have to do everything. That's just a given. No one is ever gonna make the products as good as you. That is, again, one of those sacrifices that you're gonna need to be willing to make in order to scale and to do more and increase the bandwidth. And again, I have a full training that I'll link above about knowing when to hire and when to fire. Those are some of the biggest objections that I get and some possible solutions. If you can think of more solutions, please comment them down below. And thank you so much for staying until the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys.